Hey everyone, here today to talk about the law of supply. This will be real short, simple and short. Shouldn't be a big deal at all. So law of supply. Our essential questions are to explain what is the law of supply, and then be able to create and interpret what a supply graph looks like using a supply schedule. So let's get started. Okay. Okay. So, anyways, the law of supply is not very difficult to really understand. Basically, the law of supply states is that as prices go down, the quantity supplied goes down. So, for instance, if the price for a gallon of gasoline goes to 2 cents a gallon, do you think the oil companies will continue to produce it? No, they will not. Okay, they will basically stop producing. Okay, so whenever the price of a certain product or a certain good or service goes down, the quantity supplied is going to go down as well. Okay. Conversely, if the price of something goes up, the quantity supplied will also go up. So, for instance, if the price of gas goes up to say $5 a gallon, you can bet your bottom dollar that the oil companies will find more ways to get more gas out of the ground, get more oil out of the ground, excuse me, to provide that to consumers. Okay, and that's exactly what we've seen. We've actually found more oil over the past 20 years than we thought we had because the price of oil goes up and up and up, and as a result, the quantity also goes up. All right. So, anyways, here's what a supply curve looks like. Basically, what you can see is you're gonna have your price on the vertical axis here, and then your quantity is going to be on the horizontal axis here. And basically, if you look at this little supply schedule right here, the law of supply will state that for if a certain good is going to be $1, there's going to be 4 provided. But as the price of that good goes up, the quantity provided goes up as well. And that is kind of, like I said, the basic kind of law of supply rule. That as something gets more expensive, there will be more supplied. Okay, so like I said, that's all I really have for you. Pretty straightforward. Real quickly though, notice once again, this is a supply curve. Supply curve always goes from left to right up. Okay, that's the law of supply. Okay, it never goes any other way. All right, so stop there for today. Hey everyone, here today to talk about the law of demand. Be a real short lecture. The essential questions are: what is the law of demand? How do certain patterns and behavior affect demand? And then once again, look at a demand schedule and be able to use and interpret that and make it into a graph. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. There you go. Listen to me. Here we go. Alrighty, so you should have watched the real brief lecture on the law of supply. Some similarities to how we're going to go through this lecture. Okay, so the law of demand is pretty straightforward. You're already experts at this because I'm sure as consumers you act like this. But basically, the law of demand states that when the price of something goes down, okay, the demand for it, okay, goes up. I don't know what's going on here. Sorry about that. So basically, if a can of soda, or a bottle of soda at school costs $2 a bottle, okay, you're probably not gonna want to buy that. Okay, because the flip side of the law of demand says that as prices go up, your quantity demanded is going to go down. Okay, so at $2, your demand for soda is going to go way, way, way down. But if I was going to tell you that they're going to sell soda for 5 cents a bottle, your demand is going to skyrocket and go up. So basically, the cheaper things are, the more you want them. The more expensive things are, the less you want them. That is, in essence, the law of demand. Not too complicated, and you as a consumer, already know this. All right. So one quick thing about demand: when we look at demand schedules and we graph demand, these are things that consumers must be willing and able to buy. Okay. So for instance, I'm not able to buy a Rolls Royce, or you'll still hear a unicorn. Okay. A 10-year-old kid might not be in the market for an iPad. Okay. So when we talk about demand schedules and making demand graphs, these have to be things that you can realistically buy, things that you're in the market for. Okay, so basically, what's going on here? Sorry about that. So basically, here's a demand schedule. Okay, this is a demand schedule for a really expensive watch. Okay, so let's say you you own a jewelry store and you sell watches. Okay. Basically, the more expensive you price your watch for, the less consumers are going to want it. Okay. So, for instance, if you were to price your watch at $600 per watch, you'll see here that in your community, 0 people are going to buy that watch. Okay. But as you lower the price, consumers are going to be more interested and therefore demand more of those watches. So if you lower it to 500 bucks, the people in your community will maybe want 1,500 watches. Okay, and you'll notice that as you lower the price, more and more people want that watch. Okay, so if you lower it to $100, 5,000 people will buy that watch. Okay, so that is, like I said, the law of demand. Okay, the cheaper things get, the more consumers want them. The more expensive they are, the less they want them. Okay? Now, demand curve is going to be the opposite of your supply curve. Okay, so that is what a demand curve is going to look like. A demand curve is always going to be going that way, whereas a supply curve is going to be going that way. Okay? So, moving on. There are certain things that influence the law of demand, that affect the law of demand. Okay? And these patterns of behavior, there's 3 of them that we're going to talk about. One is the income effect. Okay? The income effect is basically the amount of money or income people have available to spend on goods and services. Okay? So in other words, it's their purchasing power or buying power. Okay? This is pretty straightforward. All right? As consumers' purchasing power increases, their demand for goods and services also will increase. So essentially, if you were to get a raise or if you were to make more money, that is going to increase your demand for certain products. Okay, I don't really think that's shocking to anyone, but basically the more money you have, the more you're going to spend. Okay, which means your demand for certain things will increase. Okay, substitution effect. And this is something, once again, that you might never have ever heard of this, but this is something you're all experts at. Okay, substitution effect basically says that when certain goods or services become too expensive, we will basically eliminate our demand for that good and, in essence, buy something else. Okay, so let's imagine that here are all some goods that you may or may not purchase throughout the year. A can of soda, pizza slice, 2 tickets in a movie, iPhone, boots with a fur. Okay, imagine that these things were going to skyrocket in price. Okay, so let's say a slice of pizza is now $3.50. Okay, the substitution effect is going to say basically that instead of paying for the pizza, you will just buy a cheaper substitute. So maybe you'll go buy a sub sandwich, or you'll go buy a taco instead. Okay, if iPhones get too expensive, maybe you'll, instead of getting the iPhone, you'll get a cheaper phone, like for instance the Pantech. And if movies get too expensive, well, maybe you're just going to rely on Redbox. Okay, so anyways, that's a substitution effect. Like I said, pretty straightforward. All right, and the next pattern of behavior that influences the law of demand is something known as diminishing marginal utility. Okay, and what that basically means is that we don't have infinite demand for goods. Okay, sometimes there's just too much and we can't consume, a complete amount of something. Okay, so diminishing marginal utility basically says the usefulness of a product or the amount of satisfaction that individual receives from a consuming project eventually declines. Okay, so for instance, a great example of this is like Thanksgiving dinner. Okay, Thanksgiving dinner in my family, we always stuff ourselves, but really that first plate is really the best plate of food. I mean, that's like where the food tastes the best. You're hungry, and it's an amazing dish. Okay, but then sometimes you go back for your seconds. Okay, and the food's good, but it's not as good. And then you get to the point where you just can't stop eating. And you're having a hard time breathing, but you still keep eating. I'm sure you know someone in your family that kind of does that. The law of demand says that eventually our demand for the Thanksgiving food is going to decrease. The more we consume of that Thanksgiving dinner, the less we're going to want of that Thanksgiving dinner because, our demand for certain things is not infinite. Okay? For another kind of example is that if you need a new car, you're going to go buy a new car, and once you purchase that car, your demand for cars is going to be, essentially 0 because you have a car, you don't need another one. Okay? And so this is another kind of rules the law of demand that kind of shows how people act. All right.